Okay, perhaps I'll start off with the comments that you made. This election, two Workers' Party anyway, because I do not speak for the other parties, and I need to make that clear just in case there's any misunderstanding. We have said that this election is important for us and important for Singapore in various respects. One respect is that we are aiming to win at least one GRC. Now, why is that important? I think it's important not just for us, but for Singapore as a whole, in order to inject some sense of balance into Parliament. From 1981, when Mr. J.B. Jeyaretnam broke through in Anson, all the way till now, we have had maximum of maybe 4 elected MPs from non-PAP parties in the 1981 GE, and then since then it's just been 2 people up to now. And, the question is this enough? Now, there was a comment made earlier by somebody that, okay, in his view, Singapore is actually 95% of the time correct and maybe just 5% there are problems. But the issue is really this. If there is a policy that the ruling party intends to put in place, and despite whatever reservations that some of the backbenchers may have and their internal discussions or whatever, that the political leadership says we are going to go this way, now, is there any way for us to stop it? And the answer is, if the House is imbalanced in that way, it's probably very little you can do to stop it. Now, what can the opposition offer? I just give you an example based on recent election experience. In 2006, those of you who are old enough to remember, you know that one of the campaign issues that Workers' Party raised was this issue of means testing in the hospitals. You remember this? Okay, now, because, to cut a long story short, the health minister had said that he was considering or going to implement means testing for subsidies in C-class wards. Now, of course, there are different views on this, but our view really is that this healthcare, especially acute healthcare, is a very essential public good. And because of this, we feel that every citizen, regardless of his social circumstances and so on, he should be entitled to this as a basic right for the citizens. Now, because of that, right, you recall that in mid-campaign, the health minister said, okay, I think, we will look at this again and we will not implement it if it's too inefficient to do so, and so on and so forth. So this is an illustration of the potential bargaining power that Singaporeans can have if you have a threat coming to the political power of the ruling party. But of course, after some time, when the ruling party was returned to power and, about 2 years later, they implemented the policy anyway. But it just shows you the potential and yet limitations of having opposition and yet limited presence. Now, on this issue, perhaps I would take the opportunity to talk, to respond to what Michael Palmer said earlier about role of NCMP and so on. It's true, what he mentioned, that as a non-constituency member, even though I'm not an elected member, I am present in the House and I can participate in debates and so on, more or less in the same manner as other MPs. But the critical point is that I don't have the same voting rights. So, I've had the strange, unique opportunity of, speaking up against the constitutional amendment. And then finally, my final line in the speech will be, the member for Hougang will vote against this amendment because I can't vote. Okay, so there is a very important difference here. Okay, there's a clear stratification. I think the ruling party may not mind having more NCMPs because you can talk, fine, but in the end, the important bills, we're just going to push it through anyway. So it's good to have a nice, to show that Parliament is functioning. But in the end, when it comes to power balance, is there really a difference? Is it the same, you see? Okay, so I think that's important for people to realize, especially with this new safety net coming about of this 9 NCMPs. The other thing which I would like to return to is about building alternative bases as an insurance against the ruling party. Now, being somebody who's not elected, I understand this very well. We have tried to, for example, engage the residents in PAP wards as much as possible. And by that, the only reasonable thing we can really do is to visit public places and maybe to knock on doors, visit people in their flats and talk to them. But if we ever wanted to organize any activity, we would need permission for the use of space. And that's where the bureaucracy comes in, you see. We've actually applied for use of premises that are under the community clubs, for example, or even town council, and the answer is no. So in that sense, okay, we face some challenges here in trying to build up and, in a sense, get to build, in a sense, confidence with the people. So there are some limitations of the NCMP scheme, which I think everybody should be aware of. It is not the same as being an elected MP. Granted, yes, we can take part in policy debates. Yes, there may be a certain opportunity to contribute in that way. But the limitations are real and they are serious. Certainly, as I said, I can only speak for WP. We have been working very hard at building our organization. So you will see that, we have made some progress, I would say. I'm quite pleased about it, actually. And there have been younger and more diverse people joining us now. I think whatever climate of fear may have existed in the past, I think it's very much mitigated today, to be honest. And in that sense, what does Workers' Party stand for? We have published manifestos in the past which document where we come from. Basically speaking, our main concerns would generally tend to center around civil liberties, social justice, labor rights, things to do with justice and due process and so on. These are our typical areas of concern. How different it is from the other parties, you would have to compare the manifestos and to see that. But I do think that we're different from the ruling party, at least in these respects.
Dr. Chi, maybe you can tell us how SDP is different.
Yes, and that's also to address the point that one of the gentlemen had brought up a little while ago. If you talk about what the parties stand for, I can spend the next half an hour trying to describe it to you, but I assure you it'll be very, very massive and long drawn out. I think it might be better for you because it's readily available on the net. Okay, go to our website. We've published our economic manifesto. It's called It's About You. We've also taken the trouble to put out our shadow budget. All right, that is downloadable on our website. Read it. And if you do have any questions and points that you want to ask us on, please feel free to email us or come down to our office. We'd be more than happy to have this conversation with you. But this is what I would like to address this question, and that is to have opposition in Singapore, opposition politics in Singapore move away from this very personality-based kinds of situation, almost devoid of issues. All right. We have made the very conscientious effort to make sure that we put up as comprehensive as we can, a workable alternative as we can, so that our members of the public, can then focus on these issues and thereby really talking about party politics and issues rather than personalities. Okay? So I hope I've answered your question. I'd like to address this point that this gentleman had brought up a little while ago. I don't know what total freedom is. I don't know what complete democracy is, because that's not what we're advocating. What we're advocating is the democracy that Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and his early starters in the PAP, the freedom that they used, right, to say that we want to be Singapore and we wanted the British out. If it weren't for those political freedoms that we have had, that we actually fought for, we would still be singing God Save the Queen and not Majulah Singapura. Right? Now, it is the kind of democracy that I would like to see, whereby Mr. Chia Tai-po doesn't have to stay locked up in prison for 32 years because he disagreed with what the PAP said. It is the kind of democracy that Mr. Vincent Cheng, who's seated right here in this hall, doesn't have to go in to the ISD center and be beaten up just because he wanted to help poor workers in Jurong. That's the democracy that I'd like to see. For Singaporeans to be able to say, look, I have a right to speak up and not get victimized by this government. That's the democracy that we're talking about. So let's not confuse what total democracy is, what total freedom is. Let's talk about a system whereby it is guaranteed, it is provided for in our own constitution. Not any constitution of the United States, no. Our very own constitution guarantees us those freedoms. But the PAP has hijacked it. It's as simple as that.
Well, I would say that you can read about our pledges, our policies, if you go to our website, reformparty.net. And my own blog has also outlined, that's sonofadud.com, has outlined some of our ideas for changing things in Singapore. And it's absolutely not true to say that we haven't offered coherent, well-thought-out alternatives to many of the policies in Singapore that the PAP have put in place, and that we are aimed at improving the lives of Singaporeans. And as regards the assertion that the opposition is about personalities, our mantra has always been policies before personalities. For someone to say that the opposition is always bickering shows that they don't understand what democracy is about. There are different parties with different ideologies, platforms and programs. You can't expect them all to come together. That's not how democracy works. What I will say is that we all share a common objective, and once we get into Parliament, we would work together to ensure that there were changes to the way Singapore is run and to improve things. And as regards to whether you really need an opposition or you need democracy in Singapore, you either believe in that competition brings benefits or you don't. If you believe in competition in business, surely you believe that competition in the political sphere brings benefits. It brings about more scrutiny of policies, better policies. It highlights defects or possible shortcomings which Mr. Palmer, for all the best will in the world, is not going to highlight because he's a member of the ruling party. So, either you believe in competition or you don't. And, unfortunately, this is a government that doesn't seem to believe in competition in either the political or the economic sphere, because when you come down to look at many of the areas of the domestic economy, many of the companies running large sectors of our economy can all be traced back to Temasek Holdings.